Warmed up. So either that, well, so you guys need to start on the trip, so I can figure out
Welcome. Good morning. On this day is about to get hot. My name is Victoria McDonald, and I'm assisting the Reverend Kevin Carson. Vic Allen is our tech guy, and Jessica Kuipers is keeping our musical spirit alive. Fabulous introduction. This Unitarian Universalist Church of Idaho Falls is an open-minded church that respects the world's religions and sacred traditions while believing that personal experience, conscience, and reasoning will guide us on our path. If you are joining us online, please sign into the chat box where you can share your joys and concerns, and please feel free to share if you're online. We understand your struggles because we go through the same struggles. Announcements. Please silence your phones because now you will be free from all the pestering that comes to you via your phone, just for a short time. Another announcement, our next second Sunday meal will not be a potluck, June 11th, but it will be a picnic held outside in our Peace Garden. It will be lovely weather, I've been told. Please bring a lawn chair, a tasty lunch for tasty lunch for yourself or something to share, drinks or something appropriate for a picnic. Polite, leashed dogs are invited. And usually on the second Sunday, we only have polite dogs that I've seen, but just in case. Usually our second Sunday offertory goes to a Change for Change recipient. Wasn't announced, so next second Sunday, we will, during the offertory, donate to Habitat for Humanity, which is our chosen recipient. Karen Lansing spoke, I believe, the last week of April about Habitat for Humanity. It was truly inspiring. I knew it was good, but I didn't know it was that good. And they are worthy of our support. So please remember, even if it's not announced, those things do happen. On June 27th, which is way in the future, I believe that date is right, that's a Tuesday, a memorial for Bonnie Anderson will be held in her home on 348 H Street. Are there other announcements? Because we sometimes forget things that are important. ringing the peace bowl. Whenever I pick up this peace bowl, I think of the younger Rachel Carson, beloved daughter of Reverend Kevin and Mardi Carson. This peace bowl caught young Rachel's eye and ear, and her parents purchased it in a 10,000 Villages store back in Rhode Island. It's here with us in honor of her bright spirit. Please breathe deeply while I ring the bowl and celebrate those we love, past and present, and give thanks for having them in our lives. And now our prelude. Please join me in repeating our covenant as found in your order of service. Love is the spirit of this community, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. For our chalice lighting, we have the words of Dorothy Kaufmann, a Unitarian minister from Glaubens, Germany. From the beginning spark of our existence, we are pervaded with light energy, shining colors to our eyes, warmth to our skin, and inspiration to our soul. In this unity of creative sparks, life unfolds. Let us open our senses to the light within us and around us, and send it back out with shining examples into the world.
Good morning. Our call to worship this morning is the poem The Temple of the Animals by Robert Duncan. The temple of the animals has fallen into disrepair. The pad of feet has faded. The panthers flee the shadows of the day. The smell of musk has faded, but lingers there, lingers, bitterly in my room. Tired, I recall the animals of last year, the altars of the bear, tribunals of the ape, solitudes of elephantine gloom, rare zebra-striped retreats, prophecies of dog, sanctuaries of the pygmy deer. Were there rituals I had forgotten? Animal calls to which those animal voices replied, called and called until that jungle stirred. Were there voices that I heard? Love was the very animal made his lair, slept out his winter in my heart. Did he seek my heart or ever sleep there? I have seen the animals depart, forgotten their voices or barely remembered, like the last speech when the company goes, or the beloved face that the heart knows, forgets, and knows. I have heard the dying footsteps fall. The sound has faded, but lingers here. Ah, bitterly I recall the animals of last year. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit and join in singing our opening hymn, number 175, We Celebrate the Web of Life.
Good morning. This morning I'm going to share a book called Explorers of the Wild by Cale Atkinson and illustrated by the same person. So he drew it, he drew it and he wrote it, and it's a good tale. I love to explore. It's my favorite thing to do. There are so many neat things to see, like over there, and so many strange things to find, like under here. My parents tell me to be careful. They say you never know what you'll run into in the wild. I say I'm an explorer, and explorers are prepared for anything. So I climb over trees, I roll down hills. I run and I run until one day I ran right into I was scared at first. I mean, I was really scared. But then I saw we were both explorers. Together, we found things to touch, things to see, things to hear, and even things to taste. Well, kind of. No discovery was too small to share, and no mountain was too big to conquer. This was our day. This was our adventure. We were kings of the wild. I didn't want it to end, but I had to go home. So I took a picture to always remember the greatest explorer I ever met. And this book is dedicated to every explorer who runs through the wild with an open mind and an open heart. We will now sing out the children.
Love give light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return.
Do we have any joys and concerns? Our joys and concerns are very special to our congregation. We always hope for joy, but we recognize that concerns and sorrows are in our lives. Vic, are there any things online you want to read? Okay, I just have them. Okay, welcome to Tim Schrader. She guessed at your spelling. Welcome. And Judy Stanley has a joy, and then arrows to concerns and sorrows. So this is like translation. Lovely weather. That's joy. And the concern and the sorrow is the future and all in need. And I have quite a few joys. You know, when you stand up here and you have the mic, you can really cut loose. So my first joy is to be able to see the robins in my yard after the sprinkling system went on. That's a little joy. And they have arguments out there, and I just can't figure it out for them, but they seem to be finding good things. My second joy, yesterday, I left Idaho Falls on a big bus at 9 o'clock for a visit to Hagerman and to see the Frank Lloyd Wright designed house in Bliss. There were about 46 of us. First it was cool. By the time Hagerman's hot, much hotter. The plants are much more advanced. And I sat outside and ate a lunch. Everybody else sat inside, but I wanted to be outside, and we walked up and down. Then we had two groups. I was the second group to go to the Teeter house, and I was astounded. There are no 90-degree angles in that house. There are 60-degree angles and 120-degree angles. Lots of stone. It's on a steep cliff looking down on the Snake River. I have pictures. I do not have the words for it, but after I was done, the person I sat next to said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I am speechless, and that doesn't happen very often." You can't go as a private individual. You have to go with a group. But we really have a little gift in Idaho, and they bring groups from Boise, and they should bring more groups from Idaho Falls. So that is my extreme joy. Are there any others that somebody wants to come up with at the last? Reverend Kevin will light one more candle for the joys and concerns that have not been expressed, but are in our hearts. Peace be with you.
Our reading this morning comes from the book The Sixth Extinction, An Unnatural History by Elizabeth Colbert. In an extinction event of our own making, what happens to us? One possibility is that we too will eventually be undone by our transformation of the ecological landscape. The logic behind this way of thinking runs as follows. Having freed ourselves from the constraints of evolution, humans nevertheless remain dependent on the Earth's biological and geochemical systems. By disrupting these systems, cutting down tropical rainforests, altering the composition of the atmosphere, acidifying the oceans, we're putting our own survival in danger. Among the many lessons that emerge from the geological record, perhaps the most sobering is that life, as in mutual funds, past performance is no guarantee of future results. When a mass extinction occurs, it takes out the weak and also lays low the strong. The anthropologist Louis Leakey has warned that Homo sapiens might not only be the agent of the sixth extinction, but also risk being one of its victims. Another possibility, considered by some to be more upbeat, is that human ingenuity will outrun any disaster human ingenuity sets in motion. There are serious scientists who argue, for instance, that should global warming become too grave a threat, we can counteract it by re-engineering the atmosphere. Some schemes involve scattering sulfates into the stratosphere to reflect sunlight back out to space. Others involve shooting water droplets over the Pacific to brighten clouds. If none of this works, and things go really south, there are those who maintain that people will still be okay. We'll simply decamp to other planets. One recent book advises building cities on Mars, Titan, Europa, the Moon, asteroids, and any other uninhabited chunk of matter we can find. Don't worry, its author observes, as long as we keep exploring, humanity is going to survive. Obviously, the fate of our own species concerns us disproportionately. But at the risk of sounding anti-human, some of my best friends are humans, I will say it is not in the end what's most worth attending to. Right now, in the amazing moment that to us counts as the present, we are deciding, without quite meaning to, which evolutionary pathways will remain open and which will forever be closed. No other creature has ever managed this, and it will unfortunately be our most enduring legacy. The sixth extinction will continue to determine the course of life long after everything people have written and painted and built has been ground to dust, and giant rats have or have not inherited the earth. An offering to support the mission of this church will now be given and gratefully received. This third Sunday in May has become known as Biodiversity Sunday because it lies between Endangered Species Day, which has been designated by Congress to occur on the third Thursday of May, and International Day for Biological Diversity, designated by the United Nations to be observed on May 22nd. Both are days to celebrate the wondrous diversity of life on Earth and to soberly reflect on the current threats faced by so many species due to human activity or simply our indifference. It is good that we should center our worship service this morning on the more than human world with whom we dwell and with whom we are utterly interdependent in an intricate web of all existence. There is a sacredness to life in any form that we humans have long recognized, but as our technical civilization has developed over the last few millennia, most of us have lost much of our sense of being embedded in this web of natural relationships to the detriment of all life. So let this be a time to reconnect. The deep history of life on Earth stretches back roughly 4 billion years, and with some exceptions, such as crocodiles and common loons, the species we are likely to encounter today are, like ourselves, relatively recent newcomers in the evolutionary journey. Countless microscopic species of flora and fauna shaped the Earth's atmosphere and biosphere over eons of time, creating the oxygen in our atmosphere that we breathe, and ultimately evolving into the multicellular beings that brought increasing complexity to life. New species emerged, thrived, and became extinct long before we came on the scene. It is the way life has always worked, and more than 99% of all species that have ever lived are now extinct. We no longer encounter trilobites or giant ferns, dinosaurs, woolly mammoths, or saber-toothed cats. The life forms we see around us today are the latest survivors in the game of life, and they have adapted to living in ecosystems that have evolved and stabilized since the last glacial maximum only 20,000 years ago, the mere blink of an eye in geological terms. The character of Earth's biosphere has been constantly changing as continents drift and collide, volcanoes erupt, and the climate becomes colder and hotter due to many factors. Life has flourished in many forms, and occasionally something happens that is catastrophic in nature. The fossil record reveals that there have been at least 5 such periods known as mass extinctions, beginning with the Ordovician Silurian extinction 440 million years ago, followed by the Devonian extinction 365 million years ago, the Permian-Triassic extinction 250 million years ago, the Triassic-Jurassic extinction 210 million years ago, and finally the Cretaceous-Tertiary extinction 65 million years ago. Each marked a cataclysmic period of species loss, ranging from an estimated 75% to 96% of all life on land and in the seas. Most people are familiar with the most recent Cretaceous-Tertiary, or KT, event, which ended the era of the dinosaurs, generally believed to have been caused by an asteroid impact near the Yucatan Peninsula. But the greatest mass extinction event so far was the Permian-Triassic extinction, 250 million years ago, which nearly extinguished life on Earth. It has been called the Great Dying. That mass extinction event was triggered by an exceptional eruption of volcanoes that dumped huge amounts of carbon dioxide and sulfur into the atmosphere, causing significant global warming, ocean acidification, acid rain, and other changes in the ocean and land chemistry. It took millions of years for the remnant of life on Earth to recover. But life adapts, evolves, and seems to flourish despite the odds. Life seems determined to find creative new forms and greater complexity. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes that comes from the cosmologist Brian Swimme. The deep truth about matter is that over the course of 4 billion years, molten rocks transformed themselves into monarch butterflies, blue herons, and the exalted music of Mozart. It is hard to estimate how many species now exist on Earth, especially in the oceans, which cover 2/3 of the planet. But even conservative estimates suggest the number is around 6 to 8 million, and some propose it could be as high as 20 million. And no matter how hard we try to identify them and learn about their biology, there are millions of unique species sharing the Earth with us right now that we will never get to know. It is also hard to estimate how fast species are going extinct, but it is evident that human activity, including climate change, is accelerating the rate of extinction far above the natural rate we would expect. The most conservative estimates are that about 3 species become extinct every hour, but some scientists suggest it is more likely around one every 5 minutes, and it could be even higher. It is sobering to imagine that about a dozen species could be lost forever by the end of this worship service. This represents an extinction rate that is about 1,000 times what would be expected without human activity. And it seems to be accelerating. Some scientists suggest it could soon reach a rate 10,000 times the expected natural rate. And that is why they believe we are entering into a 6th mass extinction event. This time, it is not the result of massive volcanic eruptions or an asteroid collision. It is uniquely caused by a single dominant species, us. When a species of bacteria or plankton becomes extinct, we probably won't even know it. But when we learn that a creature like the northern white rhinoceros or the Yangtze River dolphin is lost, at least some of us will experience a feeling of grief, realizing that the Earth's biodiversity is diminished, and that such magnificent beings need not have faded into history so soon. Sometimes I wish that, like Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars, I would feel a great disturbance in the Force when a species goes extinct, because it is such a profound loss. A form of life forever gone from the earth seems to warrant something like this. But given the accelerating rate of extinction, I doubt any of us could handle such a constant onslaught of emotional distress. The reality is that it can happen at any moment, and I will probably feel nothing until perhaps learning about it long after the fact in some article or book. Then, my heart can break once again. But by then, of course, it is too late to do anything about it. Only the silence remains. As more and more of us wake up to the decimation of animal and plant communities and other disastrous impacts of climate change, it is easy to fall into despair. An entire new branch of psychology is emerging to deal with the very real effects of so-called eco-anxiety. If the biologist Edward O. Wilson was right about our innate human biophilia, our natural love of other forms of life, then it should not be surprising for humans to experience strong feelings of grief when we witness the extinction of other species. Grief has been called the wild side of love. So it would be remarkable for anyone who cares about the web of life not to grieve the loss of an entire species. I remember reading an article a few years ago about the death of the last male northern white rhinoceros named Sudan, who died on March 19th, 2018 in Kenya, surrounded by the men who had cared for him and protected him, men who sometimes risk their own lives in the fight against poachers. The article said the men spent so much time with the rhinos that the rhinos often spoke to them in their dreams. As Sudan was dying, they spoke softly to him in Swahili, scratching his rough skin and weeping. They apologized for the sins of humanity, the civil wars, habitat destruction, and poaching that had reduced their numbers from an already low population of about 700 in the 1970s to only 4 in 2006. When Sudan died, only 2 females were left, a mother and her daughter, the last remnant of a mighty and beautiful species. For now, the 2 females are still alive in a preserve in Kenya, protected around the clock by armed guards. But with no males remaining, the northern white rhinoceros has been declared functionally extinct. I tear up every time I even think about this story. Unfortunately, the plight of the northern white rhino is not unique. In 2019, the United Nations issued a special report on the accelerating threat of extinction, noting that at least 1 million species were at risk. So what, if anything, can we do about it? Conservation and protection are essential for the threatened species that remain. And this is often controversial and difficult work that can even be dangerous. Just think about the battles in recent decades over spotted owls, wolves, and grizzlies. Battles fought in the courts and by activists in protests and acts of civil disobedience. And despite numerous efforts to educate the public, far too many people, motivated by ignorance, greed, or short-sightedness, are willing to decimate or even exterminate wild animals they feel are unworthy of existence, especially predators. And emotions can run extremely high. And is certainly the situation here in Idaho and surrounding states. The reestablishment of wolves in Yellowstone has been a huge success for restoring the health of the entire ecosystem. But many ranchers and hunters in our region, supported by politicians, simply don't care. The current plan for managing Idaho's wolf population by killing most of them is deeply flawed, according to most wildlife biologists. And it will threaten the viability of a species that is finally making a comeback. I'm hopeful that the lawsuits filed to force the federal government to relist wolves as threatened will succeed, and the management of wolves in our region will be returned to federal agencies and removed from state authorities. The states have demonstrated a lack of competence and a willingness to let politics overrule science repeatedly. It is one of the main reasons I donate to the Center for Biological Diversity and similar groups who bring these legal challenges. Some western states, including Idaho, of course, are also trying to remove the local grizzly bear population from protection under the Endangered Species Act, opening them up for hunting. More lawsuits will follow, I'm sure. But when a species has already passed into history, another idea, which was once only imagined in science fiction movies but is now a real possibility, is to use the DNA of extinct species to resurrect or de-extinct species that have been lost. And while it may sound like a good idea at first, there are obvious ethical questions that need to be addressed. Most of us have probably seen at least one of the Jurassic Park movies, which wrestle with the ethics of resurrecting a variety of dinosaurs by the kind of gene splicing technology I'm talking about. And predictably, the movies never end well. Who wouldn't love to see a dinosaur? But the hubris of bringing such creatures back to life apparently does not sit well with the gods. And on top of that, there are other technical issues with respect to resurrecting dinosaurs that the movies did not address, such as the lower level of oxygen in the atmosphere compared to the era in which the dinosaurs lived. But what about more recently extinct animals, such as the infamous dodo? The dodo once thrived on the island of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean, but the large, flightless, 3-foot-tall pigeon was driven to extinction in the late 1600s due to a combination of being hunted by sailors who stopped on the island and the introduction of pigs and other domesticated animals that destroyed their eggs. They were apparently docile and easy to kill, and weighing up to 50 pounds, they provided considerable meat for hungry sailors. Like a number of other animals we could name, there is no doubt that humans are directly responsible for their extinction. The dodo has, in fact, become the poster child for man-made extinction. But now, a company with the ominous-sounding name Colossal has announced their intention to resurrect the dodo through genetic manipulation, along with the thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger, and the woolly mammoth. They have already sequenced the dodo's DNA from the few remaining tissue samples available, and apparently part of their funding comes from a capital funding company set up by the Central Intelligence Agency. This sounds like a conspiracy theory in the making, or the plot of a very bad movie, but it is actually true. I have no idea why the CIA would be backing this initiative, but hey, what could possibly be wrong with that? According to Colossal, here is how you recreate a dodo. The process for bringing the dodo back to life includes genome understanding, tissue cultures, and interspecies surrogacy. Here's how it will work. The dodo recreation includes interspecies germline transfer of pigeon primordial germ cells into a surrogate chicken host. The Nicobar pigeon, the dodo's closest living relative, provides the host cells for genome engineering, while the Rodriguez solitaire, the dodo's closest genetic relative, adds additional insights. The chicken offers a foundation of avian genomics and editing. They make the process sound almost routine. My first impression is, this sounds like a creature not entirely unlike a dodo. With so many spliced genetic parts from other birds, would the result really be a dodo in its behavior and nature, even if it looks like a dodo? And how many do we need to create to reestablish social behaviors that nobody studied adequately in the 17th century? As paleogeneticist Mikkel Sinding of the University of Copenhagen said bluntly, there is nobody around to teach the dodo how to be a dodo. And extending these thoughts beyond the dodo, what about something as massive as a woolly mammoth or a predator like the thylacine? Do we really think this is a good idea just because we know how to do it? I'm not worried about some super thylacine that will emerge and take over the planet, but I am skeptical we can truly recover the essence of a lost species with our existing technology. I would love to one day visit Pleistocene Park somewhere in Siberia or Alaska, watching the mammoth herd grazing on the tundra grasses alongside giant ground sloths, with maybe a dire wolf or two or a short-faced bear thrown in to spice things up. But I have many ethical concerns about trying to resurrect extinct species that have been absent from the planet for thousands of years. And while some scientists may be excited about bringing back larger so-called charismatic megafauna, what about all the little things that used to coexist with creatures? Worms, spiders, plants, fungi, and even bacteria. How do we know if the ecosystem we offer them will keep them viable? Perhaps we owe it to more recently extinct species who were the victims of human ignorance or malice to bring them back to life with our genetic technology. But I can't imagine this being the panacea for the species we continue to lose every single day. We could never keep up with the endless demand, nor could we identify all the species to begin with. We don't even know most of them. It seems obvious to suggest that we and they would be better served by focusing on ways to reverse the rate of extinction to a natural level, and to at least minimize habitat loss and other threats, rather than placing our bets on de-extinction technologies. We could start by taking climate change seriously, drastically reducing the waste we dump on land and in the oceans, setting aside more land and waters for wildlife conservation, maybe even 1/3 to 1/2 of the Earth's surface, as some have suggested, and educating people about the importance of preserving biodiversity. None of these efforts would require some new technology. They only require the will to begin. We protect what we love. So tapping into our biophilia and encouraging love and respect for the interdependent web of all existence is essential. Losing a species to premature extinction is more than a detriment to the biodiversity that sustains us, which it most certainly is. It is also a spiritual loss and a moral failure on our part. Imagine trying to explain what a polar bear or an elephant was to a child in a few generations. Imagine a world without wild creatures that stir one's blood at the mere sight or sound of them. I would never want to live in such an impoverished world. And so I hold on to a sliver of hope that our species will change course and minimize the loss of biodiversity. I do not have to see a living recreation of a dodo or mammoth to appreciate the beautiful diversity of life that surrounds us now. Let us do everything in our power to protect them while we can. I invite you once again to rise in body or spirit and join in singing our closing hymn, number 163, For the Earth Forever Turning. Our closing words are a prayer for Biodiversity Sunday. Spirit of life, on this special day of biodiversity and always, we give thanks for the bees, moths, and butterflies, for the glistening green mosses and prickly pear cacti, for the pine trees, purple flowers, and fleshy fungi, for the birds, the bears, and the big cats. We give thanks for the whales, the worms, and the walruses, for the flies, the foxes, the ferns, for the llamas, the lichen, and the lizards. We give thanks for the land, water, and air we share, for this whole sacred ecosystem of beings. Bless what we share in common, our hungers, thirsts, our drive to connect. Bless our beautiful differences and diversity, our bodies, histories, our unique paths. Bless the roots and relationships that connect us to one another, and bless our right to belong, to be, to become, in this wild, wonderful web of life that is our home. May it be so, may we be so. Amen, and blessed be.
Please join me in saying the words in your order of service for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.